Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and the reason I call myself that is because I believe in the combination of practical skills as well as the right mental attitude in order to achieve your artistic ambitions. And this is my vlog where I share with you my journey and the various trials and tribulations therein, the things that I learned, the things that I'm applying, and how you too can apply them towards your life, hopefully to make it better, to make it easier, and things of that nature. Now, before I dive in, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't done so already. That way you get all the various episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did. I truly appreciate it. And if you already were subscribed, well then, thank you as well. All right, let's get into it. So last week, one of the big things was hashtag pitmad, which is for writers, an online event via Twitter where writers who have completed works but are unpublished pitch them via Twitter to literary agents, publishers, and so forth. And the way it works is literally you just type out a tweet and put in the hashtag pitmad along with other hashtags that might correspond to your work. So if it's a young adult novel, if it's whatever else, right? You put that in. And the idea, or the hope rather, is that someone notices your work, literary agent or publisher, and asks to see it. Now, it's not a guarantee that your book will be published when that happens, but it certainly is a step in the right direction. And so it's a fun event that happens happens 4 times a year. And so there's one more that will happen this year. But this was my first time participating. And I will say overall, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun from the standpoint of I got to know the writing community a little bit more. Like if you search the hashtag, you start to see the various pitches out there, which are obviously the ideas of various authors. And not only that, like it's one thing, I talk about this all the time, it's one thing to have an idea, because ideas are a dime a dozen. But these pitches, these are completed works. So someone had this idea and executed upon it. And that to me is the fantastic part, and that I really honor, because these are people that went out and did something. They didn't just talk about it, they actually did the work. So kudos to them, and I guess by extension, kudos to me. I'm getting sort of better at accepting praise for myself, which I think you should too. I think we're all a little bit terrible at it. That's not to say like we need our heads to explode because of our egos, but you can acknowledge the great work you have done in the past. I got to know and read these various pitches, and there's a lot of good ones. And furthermore, the writing community, you would think, maybe on the surface, maybe you wouldn't, I don't know, but for me, there was some sort of worry of like, okay, there's all these writers, and there's all these writers, so like, what are we competing for, essentially, right? Are they going to be hostile? Even though there's not like an actual like set amount of literary agents that will accept X amount of pitches, right? In theory, they can accept infinite pitches. It's up to them. Obviously, the book market and stuff like that, and how they think they can market a book, that dictates it. But it's not a set amount, But regardless, you would think like, okay, all these writers would be competitive with each other in that sense, and it kind of went the opposite way. We were all supportive of each other. One of the ways you should show support is you retweet the various pitches of somebody else. And so I did that for my friend Emily, who's also my book editor, and Emily Krempholtz, who I interviewed in the past. You can check out that interview. But she had a pitch, and so I kind of retweeted her. And then it's cool because other people started retweeting my pitches that I didn't know. And I was like, oh, cool, that's awesome. So I started kind of getting to know them a little bit. I would comment or something like that on their pitches, and it was just great to kind of form that bond. And So people retweeted my stuff and I would retweet theirs, and yeah, like there was this kinship. Now, to the extent that these newfound friendships, if you want to call them that, will remain, we'll see. But it's just, I don't know, it's just nice, especially when you look at social media, and I guess particularly on Twitter. From my perspective, it has seemed so like politically toxic, and I don't care if you're like left, right, center, it doesn't matter. It just seems like two opposing forces at each other's necks the entire time. And so this was just a breath of fresh air to witness and see. So it really was amazing in that sense. And the way it works overall is you get the ability. I mean, it's up to you to really follow the rules. So I don't know if anyone's broken the rules, but shame on them if they did. But you essentially get 3 pitches, 3 tweets of your idea. It could be the same one over and over, throughout the day, or it could be multiple versions of it. So I chose to go the route of multiple versions. And now about like Tuesday, I really started thinking about it. I was like, okay, if this is going to be on Twitter, I have a summary that's really well written, but it's definitely longer than 280 characters. And the 280 characters obviously has to include any of the hashtags. So I said to myself, let me draft something. And I worked with Emily again on this, where I drafted 3 versions and then sent them over to her. And she helped me make it obviously a lot better. It was one of those things when I drafted them, you want it to be good, but at a certain point you get stuck on this idea of making it just fit. So by the end, I was like, listen, I don't even know if these are any good. I just know that they fit the character limit. So that was kind of the obstacle of like making it good while fitting the character limit. So Emily kind of worked with me, and one of the things that she pointed out was my 3 tweets were relatively the same. And so she said, if you're gonna use the 3 tweets and utilize them in the sense that you're gonna say something different, well then make it vastly different. Don't just kind of make it slightly different. And she wasn't saying, like, again, it's strategy-wise, like you can say the same thing if you really feel like you have a really strong pitch with just like one, we'll call it a log line, even though it's not technically a log line. But if you think you have a really strong one, yeah, you can just tweet that out 3 times over, and that's fine. But she wasn't necessarily advocating that. I could have very well done that and focused on just like writing one really good one. But I just, for me, my mentality going into it was that perhaps by sending kind of something new, maybe it gives me more opportunities to grip somebody. Now, the thing of it is, like, I didn't, I studied and kind of looked into this, but there's not, at least as far as like what I was able to glean, there's not like official statistics and things of that nature. Or maybe if I'm admitting anything, I was too lazy to like really dig in and do my own research of like what sort of tweets in the past have gotten noticed at about what time and things of that nature, right? So it's one of those things, you can have a really good hook, if you will, but tweet it out at the wrong time. There's a lot of, I won't call it luck, I'll call it serendipity. There's a lot of serendipity involved with the correct literary agent that would be a good fit for your work, seeing it at the right time. But it's obviously not gambling, because A, you're not like putting in financial stakes. If anything, you just stand to gain something, and the downside is obviously minimal. In fact, none, right? With the exception of perhaps your time. But we'll talk about that. Well, it's a quick tangent. Like, even though you quote unquote lose time, it's like at the end of the day, it forced you to really think about like, what is my story at its core? Because essentially, like, it is just the quickest pitch a version of your story that you might have to give in the future. So having that be at your disposal is a good thing. And so once she said like your 3 tweets are essentially similar, I was like, okay, let me really rework this. So there's 3 main characters, and I essentially worked each tweet to be kind of from a different perspective. Each one being from one of the 3 characters, until with the 3 tweets it covers all of them. And not only that, because they're vastly different characters, they have vastly different needs, and so I could highlight kind of another angle of it. Like let's say in the novel, there's a big concert that happens that everyone's looking forward to. So in one tweet, I could kind of highlight that versus like the bonds of friendship and coming of age and so forth. So there was an opportunity to play with it, and so I'm glad she kind of pushed me in that direction. And overall, we made 3 tweets that I thought worked really well. Again, the character limit does stifle you a little bit. Now, not that I would have necessarily done this, but I did see a lot of people be sort of creative and utilize like the Twitter language to be able to pitch their stuff. Like mine was very grammatically correct, and they just kind of essentially write out sentences. But other people, in all caps, would take 2 titles and let's say like Game of Thrones, X for by. And Game of Thrones, I don't know, I'm just gonna go completely weirdo with it and say Prospect Park West. Okay, those are 2 very different books, right? So Game of Thrones, you've probably heard of. Prospect Park West is basically an equivalent of Desperate Housewives in a novel form, except taking place in Brooklyn instead of Wisteria Lane, right? So in that sense, for anyone reading, it's like, oh, okay, cool. So wait, Game of Thrones meets Housewives, that's really interesting. And then they go into their sort of pitch. Some might even like bullet point it or whatever else, put like emojis. So there was a lot of very clever things going on. That's not my style necessarily. So, I'm not knocking it, but I'm just also not embracing it at the same time. And to that point, one of the things I haven't really done that I would like to is really kind of go back in on that day and see, because you can tell the way it works is a publisher will hit like on your tweet, and if they like your tweet, then that's basically the go-ahead to contact them about your work, right? And so it'd be interesting to kind of go through the hashtags from that day and see what did work. Again, going, kind of creating my own research of like time, idea, whatever, and kind of format, like all these various things, and see what can be formulated of it. Now, not that it's ultimately formulaic, but it would just still be interesting to kind of see and observe, right? So it was a fun event. I did not get any literary agents or publisher to like my stuff. I don't take that as a failure. It's just, it was what it was. And now I can kind of continue on with the query process for my book and reaching out to literary agents more directly. And we'll see, and if for some reason I don't get a response before the next pitmad event, then I'll participate again and kind of go from there. But nothing was, even though nothing was gained, also nothing was lost. But I would also, it's actually false to say nothing was gained, because a lot of things were gained. Like I said, I got to know a lot of amazing people. And it also, in a sense, revealed some friendships to me. Now, what do I mean by this? I had emailed out a select few people in my life that I really trusted and so forth, and I said, hey, it would mean the world to me if you retweeted tomorrow because of this event. And I get it. Listen, it's one of those things. Am I saying like anyone who didn't retweet that now I'm upset at them for? No, I'm not. But because I can't be, right? It's 2020. We all have things that are going on in our life and things of that nature. But I do know there are certain people that chose not to retweet and so forth. And this kind of leads to a larger discussion that I'm about to get into of things. But it's really the idea of be selective in who kind of supports you, right? Who supports you should really help dictate kind of the group of friends that you really are around. I look to like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and they had kind of their group of friends, and they help nurture each other and provide ideas and so forth. And really were a support network for each other as they grew within the Hollywood business. And that's fantastic. And I try to, as much as I can, have that with my friends. Now, it's much of a give as much as it is a take. So, you have to participate. It's not just a, like, hey, retweet my stuff type of thing. That's not what I'm asking. I very much try to be there for anybody and support people. But there's this notion like, I think at a certain point, if someone is being supportive of you or not. And sadly, kind of this helped clarify even further than initially of who actually is supportive and whatever else. And not that I take it personally, like there's someone in particular that comes to mind who they're just a complainer. And it's just they like to complain about X, Y, and Z, but they never do anything about it. And there's been a number of instances that it's just like I've seen this person not say anything, not respond to, in like a group chat, people would be talking and just, weeks would go by, nothing would be ever said from this person. And like the one thing that perhaps like someone else will say of like, hey, maybe we should do this. Is anyone interested? And that person will just jump in all of a sudden and be like, no. So, if it's okay if you're not going to participate in the conversation, but then to the only contribution that you have is always like no and negative. It's not. It sends a message, one that doesn't ultimately serve them. Right? Again, it's not really about me. It's about them, because it's not going to help them in their life. People don't want to work with people who are just constant complainers and shoot ideas down. It's okay to criticize something, but offer something as well. And I think that's a big issue. So, I think in that way, I really saw that furthered in last week. One of the things that I remember, I was kind of, people hit me up to ask for my advice or my resources and my time and so forth. And, again, I like supporting my friends. I like being there for my friends, even if, we're not as close, like we don't necessarily like, maybe we'll like talk 3 times a year, maybe, and whatever else. But I do try to be there for people and give them the benefit of the doubt. But one of the things that just last week was so evident was people just being disrespectful of, well, in this case, my time, but I know that doesn't just happen with me. Like, this is how they probably are to other people. Like, for example, there was an instance where someone, we were supposed to kind of meet up, and the time that we were supposed to meet up, I was already waiting, and I get a text of like, 20 minutes after we were supposed to meet, like, hey, do you want anything from Starbucks? And it's like, you don't have time to go to Starbucks. You're already 20 minutes late. But this is the mentality that it's okay. And it's not like, it could have been like, hey, I know I'm running late. Would you want anything from Starbucks, as an apology gift or whatever, right? And it just, I don't know, I'm someone that always tries to value other people's time. And so I think it is very disrespectful when other people don't value yours. And it's just very upsetting. The other thing, I have this other friend who, I've tried to hang out with a couple of times at this point, because I know he's been bummed out and not necessarily in a good place. And, there's been times like, okay, I've called him and it's like, all right, let's hang out. And he's like, okay, I'll be right over. And so like, I'll have bought food and drinks and whatever else, so that way we can just have a fun time together. And this was after like confirmation of like, okay, cool, I'll be there in 30 minutes. 30 minutes goes by, nothing, and not that I'm expecting him, especially like on an impromptu thing, to show up on time. If it's impromptu, that's different. If it's planned, then yes, I expect you to be on time. Just a quick side thing. But regardless, so, he doesn't show up. An hour goes by, I text like, hey, just checking in, your ETA, nothing. 2 hours, I call, nothing. Next day, call, crickets. I'm like, okay. And then we were supposed to do something together. So, in the middle of the week. And so I called him the day before, nothing. And by the way, this was something that was planned like weeks ago. So I'm like, okay. And so, the day of the event goes by and like, I don't hear anything. I have no information. It's not like I was never going to go, even if I did have the information, but it's just baffling to me that this happens. And like, it's like, okay, I get it, especially now we're all in different places, but the distinction here, and I can say this because I know this person, I've known this person for a number of years, they are a complainer and they always feel like they're getting fucked in life. And it's like, okay, but the people because I'm not the only one, right? This isn't about me. I know other people in his life that are always there for him. And, he does this to them. He just blows them off without any explanation and never an apology. Because he can't give that apology because he's the victim. And, so in that sense, like, that was another big reveal. And it's not just him. Like, you start to see these things, and if 2020's kind of made anything clear to me, it's be more focused on what you meaning you as well as me want, and only surround yourself with the people that are going to give you that sort of energy. And again, it's not just a take. You have to give as well, but who are the people that you are willing to give to? Now, to that effect, I've given plenty to people who are undeserving, and it's one of those things. Okay, you've revealed yourself to me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And so if you want me to do it again, that's on you. Got to prove to me why it's worth my time. And I'm not saying, listen, we're all human beings. We all have to find our way in that way. So it's not like none of us are exempt from making mistakes. But I think one of the things as a culture, as a society, we have a hard time admitting is when we're wrong and apologizing. And I think we need to become better at that. And because I'd like to think, I'm not always the best at it, I would like to think that I'm pretty good at forgiving. But to the same token, it's one of those things like I can't frustrate myself with other people in this sense. If they're unwilling to change, then that's on them. I cannot be a force to get them to change. People will reveal themselves to you, and you just gotta be present and, be able to see it. They're just not going to change. There's a person in my life that I know, and she is incapable of not making something about her. Everything is about her. And I'm going to get into the LA fires, but I just remember seeing kind of a post of like, oh my God, 121 degree weather in LA, record high. Thank God I'm on the East Coast. And it's like, and again, because I know this person, right? So sometimes like you might see that tweet and it's like, okay, this was just, it's not the right tweet necessarily, but they're kind of processing certain things and whatever else. But I know this person, and they're based on their patterns and so forth, they just made it about them. And everything just goes back to them. But I can't be frustrated with that because that's just, they've proven themselves they can't do anything different. So that's not on me, right? As Byron Katie would say, like, the definition of insanity is me expecting to control other people. So I've definitely gone long on this, but the idea is really trust your intuition and don't try to control other people. Once they reveal themselves to you, just act accordingly. You don't have to be vindictive. You don't have to be vicious. You can still be empathetic and open-hearted, but you don't have to do it. One of the things, I was just listening to the Maria Forleo podcast, and she had Shirley Riley, I believe was her name. Forgive me if I've forgotten it. Literally just right before I did this, I was listening to it. And one of the things that Shirley was talking about was we have the ability very easily to say no. We just never know what we're saying no, what we need to say no to, right? When we're not clear on what our desires are for our life, and I don't just mean that from a tangible standpoint and, kind of more consumerist. I mean like, the peace and tranquility that you want in your life. If you don't have that really defined, then it becomes very hard to say, because you don't know what to say no to. But if you have a clear delineation of like, no, these are my primary focuses, then it becomes very easy to say no. Ryan Holiday, the author, talks about this a lot. He loves his writing and he loves his kids. And so he's like, if anything that really doesn't serve me takes away from that, then why would I want to do it? The answer is clear. It's a no. If I have to go do something and I'm being away from my kids, that's not what I want to be doing. If it takes me away from my writing, that's not what I want to be doing. So once you have it again defined, it becomes very easy. So really consider that. So first, clarify what it is you want in life in all aspects, creatively, spiritually, all that, and make your list. And then anything that doesn't fit that, have that rule set and say no to things. The other kind of thing that I was talking with a friend who's he's mid-20s, and he's kind of always struggling with like, what's his purpose in life, what's his calling. And it's great to have ambition, but what I notice of a lot of people is that they always feel like they're better than the job that they're at. And again, it's not to say that they don't have the qualifications or the skills to do something better. But who are you and who am I to just think that it's automatic, right? We have to prove ourselves. And when I ran AfterBuzz TV as the chief operating officer, nothing was above or below me. If the bathrooms needed cleaning, I helped clean them up, like legitimately. And it wasn't just a one-time occurrence, like constantly, And the reason for that was because I wanted our space to look good for staff, for hosts, and for guests, right? So nothing was below me. And so in that sense, you have to, no matter what you have in life, you have to put your best foot forward. You have to give it your all and be present with it. That's how you prove yourself. That's how like you show the universe, God, or if you don't believe in the spiritual, just people around you, right? Whether your bosses or people just that are observing, and it could be your coworkers, but it could also be like, let's say customers, for example. If like you're just an amazing employee at like a Starbucks, and like there's someone really high up, and they notice the hustle you got going on. They can see that and they'll be like, oh, you know what? I see you do. If you're putting this much effort into this job, I can't imagine what you'll do with the job that you actually would want to do, right? That's how you get those opportunities, but not by being like, oh, I'm meant for so much better than this. Like, says who? Says who? Prove it. Show that you, by showing responsibility in the thing that you have, it will open doors towards the thing that, now you can have more responsibility, but it doesn't just come. I'm a firm believer of that. So take that for what it's worth. And I know, I wanted to start off with the pitmad event because that's a little bit more creative, and I've kind of taken more into the mental aspects and life aspects, and I'm going to kind of continue on that a little bit further. And then I'm going to get back into the creative, I promise. So, usually I like to split it up like creative and life, but I figured this was the best way to weave stuff in the moment. So there's a parable where if you want to boil a frog, you don't just boil the water, then throw the frog in because it's going to jump out. What you do is you put the frog into the pot and slowly bring the water to a boil. And there's a number of connotations for that. Like it's basically a fable that you can apply a lot of lessons based off of, right? Now, it's interesting. I would encourage you to really consider what the lesson there is for you, because again, you can have multiple perspectives of this. There's not like one right or wrong answer. In fact, I would encourage you, it'd be very interesting to see your comments based on this. So comment down below like what you think the lesson of that parable is, of the frog in boiling water. And let's share it. Comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek, and let's see what we all come up with. But one of the interpretations that I'm looking at, because it's quite so literal, is climate change. You know, I am in Los Angeles, and quite literally, you know, yesterday I was walking my dogs and it looked very apocalyptic. Now, the reason it looked apocalyptic was because the sky was ashy, like it had fire clouds, right? Everything was very almost like sepia tone and had the reddish and like just the hue that you might expect in a apocalyptic movie, you know, like let's say a Resident Evil or something like that. It was very, very surreal and strange and all that. So there's that aspect of it, and you know, talk about like turning up the temperature of the water. You know, it was a record high in Woodland Hills. It was 121 degrees in Woodland Hills. So not all parts of LA were as hot as that, but certainly I think, you know, a lot of my friends, on average, we were like 115, 116 in terms of the temperature. That's just hot. And, you know, I had headaches yesterday. I mean, part of it, like I was just trying to survive. I was drinking as much water as I could. I had a wet washcloth all over my head just to like keep cool. I shaved my head today because I was just like, I can't, you know, I know there's not like full scientific like, you know, evidence that if you cut your hair off, it'll help keep things cool. But for me, it's a very much mental thing, if anything. So it certainly has a mental effect. Like by me shaving my head, I feel a lot cooler. And yeah, like it's just very interesting to me. Like at what point do we stop denying that climate change is happening around us? You know, when you have two hurricanes converging in on itself at the same time, when you have earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, wildfires at the rate that we're having them, it's like at what point are we going to realize that the water's being turned up and we are the frog? And also too, one of the things that I kind of thought about over the weekend, one of the fires that was started was because of a gender reveal party. There was like a explode, you know, and it was supposed to reveal the gender, and that caused a fire. Now, as of today, this is Monday, September 7th, only last I read a few hours ago, it was only 7% contained. The last, ironically, there was another instance not too long ago in 2017. This was in Arizona, so it wasn't in California, but Arizona, where they had a gender reveal party, and because of an explosion, you know, of the thing to reveal the gender, it caused 47,000 acre destruction. About $8.2 million of damage. Now, to me, the money is secondary. Like, yeah, that's terrible, but again, like $47,000 or 47,000 acres of forestry and so forth just destroyed. Like, we can't let these keep happening, and it just speaks to like the decadence of like what. Listen, I'm not knocking gender reveal parties. Have a party, enjoy it, you know, be with your friends and whatever. But why must we have like this giant explosion? Like, just cut a cake. Like, get creative, but stop putting lives, both human and animal and nature in danger. Like, at what point are we going to take responsibility for ourselves and realize enough is enough, and we only have one Earth? I don't know. It's just been on my mind, and so, at the end of the day, I can only do what I can do, and so one of the things that I've been really thinking about is like my part. So coming up, that I'll talk about in future weeks, is I'm gonna do more phone banks. So I'm gonna kind of really sit down and give you the experience of how that goes for me, and I'm even considering very heavily of being a poll worker for the election, because, and that's not partisan. I just want to kind of do my part as much as I can, and so whatever happens this election, I want to be able to say, you know what, the phone bank stuff, that is partisan, but I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, I did what I could, to the extent that I could, to make a difference. So I'll talk about that more in the future. So that's kind of all the various life stuff happening and things that I've been thinking about. Hopefully it doesn't bum you out too much. At the end of the day, it all kind of comes down to what you can control. So don't overwhelm yourself. Any problem that you kind of really isolate does become solvable in the moment. So really break it down into bite-sized pieces, and you'll start to see that you do have control over things in your life. So, don't despair. That's not what I want by talking about these things. I want quite the opposite. I want to empower you. So I hope you feel that. So creatively, I've been working on my script. In Search of Sunrise is what it's called as of now. And I have about 77 pages done, so good continued good progress. I was writing every single day last week and continue to do so. But it's interesting, even with an outline that is so amazing and very, very well crafted and looked at, like things really work. There's times when you're writing the actual script and you get into the scene and you start writing, you're like, is this any good? And from the outline it does work, and it has a dynamicism that is engaging. But once you start writing, the questioning mind enters of oh wow, just give up. And Stephen Pressfield would call it resistance. And so it's resistance with a capital R, just being no, it's not good, it sucks, blah, blah, blah. So just give up. Why are you doing this? You're just torturing yourself and things like that. And so, one of the things I've had to kind of just continue on with is just getting through it, just getting the ideas on paper. And right now especially on the first draft, you have to take your critical mind out of it and just allow your creating mind to do its magic. Not everything that comes out of your creating mind is obviously going to be good, but your critical mind can then go to work on it later. But if you're judging yourself as you're creating, you're just going to be kind of in that constant loop, and you're never going to make progress. So really, really do yourself a service, no matter what you're creating, whether it's poetry, whether it's a painting, just do it first and then critique it. And you can, adjust things as necessary, whether with, if it's like a painting, maybe you don't do it with that painting, but, certainly you can paint a new painting, right? So really, really do what you can to allow yourself, just acknowledge that voice is there of okay, hey, this sucks, why you haven't had a good idea, this dialogue is crappy, the scene is moving slowly, nothing's happening here. Just fight that urge and just be okay, yeah, no, I know it's not that good work, but you know what, let me just see where this goes, right? And so you just kind of acknowledge it and talk to it and just continue on. And so that's kind of how I've been working through this. And once the script is fully done, then I can go back in and see, okay, wow, here's the little bit of gold that I was looking for when, that I was trying to get to when I made it the first time. So now let me get rid of the other bullshit around it and elevate and make everything kind of around this, right? That's how you should approach art. And so I'm trying my best at that. My goal, I'm at 77 pages. I'm at bullet point number 11 of 15 in terms of the script. So I don't know. I think it would be very ambitious to say I'll finish the script by the end of this week, because I think it's going to be like a 120-page script, like a 2-hour movie. I think ultimately, like I think realistically it'll be like an hour and 40 in terms of page count. But for the first pass, because there's so much, as I said, I'm still looking through stuff. There's going to be a lot of padded stuff. So I think ultimately, the first draft will be 120 pages. So all that to say, I don't think I will finish this week. I'm gonna try, but as I said, I'm one to just continue progress and moving forward, and so that's what I'm gonna kind of continue to do. And in this time, I have a co-writer for this screenplay. Now, the way we're tackling it is I'm just doing this first draft all by myself, and then once I have the first draft, then we'll start to go in on it together. Now, in the time that I'm working on this, I have tasked him I said, why don't you, while you're sort of waiting on me with this, why don't you work on the how-to book for my film Idol? For those unfamiliar, I'm basically writing a book similar to Rebel Without a Crew, which is by Robert Rodriguez, based on his experience of making his first movie, El Mariachi, for $7,000. And so it's partly like a tactical guide, partly an inspirational guide. And that's, I wanted to do that. And so what I've done so far is I've dictated plenty of chapters. There's a few more like chapters that I've yet to dictate. And when I say chapters, these are just like parts of making the movie. So like color correction, music, editing, writing, casting, acting, so forth, right? So I'm on like the last stages of it. But nonetheless, so I said, like, I have all this stuff. Why don't you work on this, since I have like all of these things already kind of done, and start to polish it and get it to a better form while I work on this. And for me, that's a great way to work, because obviously things are moving forward. This was one of the things that I look to cultivate in my life. I recognize this about myself, that I like working with other people. B, I like to have multiple things going on, but it would be a disservice to just constantly every week think that like I can work on 15 different things. No, I always based on what I always prioritize. And in this sense, I'm working on the script. That's my priority. But it's not to say, I've got this, there's things like that. So there's things other people can be doing that doesn't require me at this point in time. So it's like, why not? And so, you could say like, oh, well, it's easy for you because you have these people. And it's like, okay, but I work to get those people, A, and B, I pay those people. So if nothing else, go to Upwork, talk to your friends, if, whatever else, like find people that would want to work with you. Some might be willing to do it for free, but in my case, like I don't, I see an exchange of value. I expect to get paid for the work that I do, and so I'm paying him for the work that he does. And it's cool because, while I'm working on the script, the book that I want to publish is continuing forward, right? So there's momentum on both fronts, and that's what's cool. So that's kind of overall the various things that are going on. Creatively, in terms of consumption, what's been interesting is, Tenet is out, Mulan is out, and they almost kind of represent two sides of an ideology. One's like, okay, let's have theaters reopen. One's like, okay, well, we're not going to put people, not that like this is explicit necessarily, but like we're not going to put people at risk. We're just going to put it out on VOD. And I guess the Mulan part is less about the risk. It's more about people aren't going to come out to movie theaters, so we want to make money, and VOD is going to make us money. So in that sense, it's like, okay, pick, let's see who wins out. And I think Mulan overall is kind of winning out, at least US wise, and we'll see kind of what the long term cashing in is, if you will. But it's interesting, I don't have a fear of missing out a lot. But it does, I will say, Tenet is a movie that I've been looking forward to seeing. I can see Mulan. I don't have Disney Plus, so I'm trying to ask around my friends, and I just haven't had time. I know they will give me, their login. I'm happy to throw in money to them to see it. But as far as Tenet, that's the one. LA theaters aren't even open. I think San Diego has some theaters open, but LA certainly doesn't, and so forth. And so I don't know. It's just a weird thing that a movie is out there that I would really want to see. Now, unlike most movies that I want to see, this is I don't want one spoiled for me. I don't want Tenet spoiled. And so in that regard, it's how do I avoid this? Obviously there's a way, but also from that standpoint, it's I don't want to be pushed to go see a movie just because I don't want it ruined for me. So it's a very interesting time. It's an interesting feeling. And am I advocating that I want to see Tenet on a TV at my house? I mean, I'd do it if that was an option, but I'm not necessarily advocating for it. But at the same time, nor am I advocating I want, go recklessly see it at a movie theater. I don't know. It's just, it's something that's brewing in my mind. I don't have complete thoughts. I don't know if there's a right answer. I think in all of this, we're all trying to do the best we can based on the information that we have. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because it has been on my mind, and I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are of that. Now, please, this is not an invitation to spoil Tenet for me or anyone else, so don't do that. If you want to give if you have seen it and give a quick thought of oh, it was worth seeing in the movie theater, great. I would want to know your movie theater experience more so than what you fully just thought of the movie. But yeah, let's have a healthy discussion about that. If you're open to it, comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. That's what I have for you. The last thing I'll leave, I guess, is I saw High Rise last week. It was a fun movie. I'm not gonna get more into that. I just wanted to kind of drop that in as a last nugget. Anyway, I appreciate you spending the time with me. I hope you have benefited in some small way from this, whether inspiration, whether tactic, whatever else it may be. If you have any questions, by all means, I'm open to them. Comment down below, hit me up on social media at Svitek. And furthermore, if this has been beneficial and you feel like it might benefit someone in your life, they might enjoy it, by all means, share it with them. I certainly would appreciate it. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.